Welcome to Langreskaia, to another CH2 replay cast. It's gonna be between Angry German, playing as the Wehrmacht, of course, because of his name, and, oh god, Himmudl, playing as the USF. So we already have commanders chosen, elite troops, and infantry. It's gonna be interesting. This is a replay from CH2.org, sent in by Angry German. I disagree already with what he's doing. I don't think that the 2 Pioneer start is any good at all. I think that he should have built Tier 1, his first Pioneer squad, while building an MG42 out of his HQ. The reason I say this is because against the Americans on Langreskaia, you're going to have a lot of use for the suppression of the MG42. So you definitely want to have your MG42 out as soon as possible so it can support your Pioneers and your eventual Grenadiers. He's going to build Tier 1 with his second Pioneer squad, but again, 2 Pioneer squads on an open map like this aren't really that great. They can be useful, but they can also be a liability because of, well, the riflemen and rear echelons actually being better at long range. So on the other side, we have a two riflemen start from Himmudl, so a pretty normal start. We're going to see the riflemen capping on the left side, whereas the rear echelons will be harassing on the right side, along with the Pioneers. They will meet each other fairly soon. And as you can see now, Angry German is building an MG as a 4th unit, which really, in my opinion, doesn't make too much sense because he could have gotten one as a 2nd unit anyway, and he would already have it by now, and he probably would have been able to set it up in this house, or perhaps even this house, considering how defensively the Americans are playing. But we'll see how this continues. We have the riflemen are going to attempt to push up on these Pioneers that are capturing the victory point, and they will be probably forced to retreat after capturing, with probably a couple of losses. I'm not really sure it's worth to stay capping the point, but only 1 loss if he retreats right now. 2 losses, that's fine, still fine for a VP. Especially as now there's Grenadiers approaching and they will be able to easily deal with these riflemen if they can keep the distance. They're not taking cover because of the fence's direction. We have another engagement on the right side. Pioneers at close range against the rear echelon. They will probably be able to win fairly easily at close range. So a 2nd rifleman squad is approaching the middle, but an MG42 is also on the way to support. And if it sits up like right here, there will be nothing that these riflemen can do to stop it. But unfortunately, it's moving up way too fast and way too far, and it will be flanked by these riflemen. If the MG had set up about over here, they would have been able to suppress both squads fairly easily with a bit of focus fire. So right now he will be forced to retreat by the flank. Of course, at the same time, the Germans do have a field point, whereas the Americans don't. There is a danger of the cutoff being captured by the riflemen, though, and we'll see if Angry German can do something to deal with this. He does have enough munitions for the G43 upgrades. The G43, of course, being really good at stemming a bit of the tide of close range superiority of the riflemen. Not really much going on, but still these Grenadiers are starting to edge back into the field a little bit. And, oh, it looks like he already used some kind of munitions ability. Yes, he did upgrade one of the squads of G43s, which is an excellent choice. Because the reason is the G43s are really good in the early game at close range against these riflemen. But later on, once the Grenadiers get better and can keep the distance at long range, then the LMG42 is superior. So what you want to do, ideally, is get a couple of G43 squads and then equip your other squads with, oh, excellent stun grenade. It takes out a couple of models. Then equip the rest of your Grenadiers with LMGs so that they can stand behind and put down that suppressing fire that really kills the enemy infantry. By the way, right now you really should be prioritizing getting that point. Shouldn't be building a bunker with, well, he will be coming in with the MG to support it. Again, MG was building, it was replacing itself for quite a while there, a couple of minutes at least. This is a mistake that I often see, is the fact that people really need to watch on the top right side of their screen whether or not their units are back at base and are able to reinforce. And then once they are reinforced, just moving them back onto the field at once. This is very critical. So we have the Stormtroopers being available to be deployed, and he does have the resources for the Stormtroopers. So it might perhaps be a good idea to get a Stormtrooper squad, especially later on as he will have more munitions. The STG-44s might be a pretty good option on them. He's also got access to the Panzer Tactician Smoke, and he's building tier 1. He's building phase 1 to get tier 2. So the 222 Scout Car will be available to him, along with that just defensive mechanism of the smoke. So he will, looks like, while he's lost a bit of ground in the early game, he has managed to recapture a bit of map control and is probably going to be in a pretty strong position if he can keep his infantry alive. The enemy does have a very, very heavy and oppressive infantry superiority because the enemy went for 4 rifleman squads and a lieutenant, which is usually very overkill. Also, this Grenadier squad is in very big jeopardy. It doesn't look like he was monitoring the squad at all. And the MG is being used very defensively, not really covering his Grenadiers. It could be moved up a little bit if there were more Grenadiers to support the MG. But again, really, the Americans have a lot of infantry because usually you'd go for 3 riflemen when you go lieutenant tier, but this Himodal, this player, went for 4 riflemen. So this means that in the early game he will have a lot more pushing power, and then later on into the game he will definitely feel the bleed effect that 4 rifleman squads and a lieutenant really cover and give you. So we have a few munitions cache being built over here. Now I kind of disagree. He really needs the extra infantry at this moment to push against these riflemen. He really needs at least 4 Grenadier squads and another MG42 perhaps would be also a nice idea. Because right now he really needs something to push back against this. So an excellent 3-way flank from Himodal will be able to probably deal with this machine gun. 1 Grenadier squad being very low on HP, probably going to be forced to retreat. It's 2 grenades going down onto the wooden building, almost taking it down, and the MG also going down in the process. So this was an excellent flank from the Americans. And once again, had there been more German squads, also the G43 squad going down is also a very big blow for the Axis player, and that should not have been something that you should have let happen. He's lost so far 2 Grenadier squads, which really impacts the way this game is going way more than any other really factor. Also, again, so this is 200 manpower that isn't really doing anything, and then you've lost 2 Grenadier squads, which is 480 manpower. So that's like 680 manpower of units that you haven't been able to use on the battlefield now. And now he's got 222 Scout Car building, and that might just do something to help him out. But at this point, the Americans have complete control of the fuel on the map, so they have been able to gather up enough fuel to get the flak half-track, which isn't exactly a hard counter to the Scout Car, but the Scout Car does struggle against it unless it can get its flank or rear. So again, this is the reason why you're losing, is because the Americans have been able to use that 780 manpower that you lost to get units. So that's why he's got 3 more riflemen. 3 more riflemen than your Grenadiers. Just do the math a little bit. It's 280 per squad, so it's going to be 600 plus 240. So 840, just a little bit more than what you lost. That's why he's got so much more units than you have. And the reason I'm saying this is because in the post that he made, that Angry German made, he said that he's got problems dealing with these riflemen. And the reason you've got problems dealing with that is because you need to play a little bit more defensively with your units. Your MG was pushed up way too far in that earlier engagement. And if it had been placed a little bit more defensively, using the long-range advantage of the Germans, it would have been able to easily suppress these riflemen, and you would have been able to build a better infantry force. And yes, he does have a lot of infantry, but there is a weakness to this. Maintaining 4 rifleman squads means that, look at his manpower income. It's only 234, and then when he starts to get more units, the upkeep cost of these riflemen will heavily weigh upon his ability to get more manpower. So later on into the game, he will have a lot of problems just maintaining his infantry reinforced. As you can see right now, he's depleted after just like 1 engagement with your 222. He's depleted pretty much all of his manpower reserves to replenish his riflemen. when he would be more hard-pressed to just use his fuel. Only now he's able to gather up enough manpower, which is 200, to get a captain. That is the explanation for these 4 riflemen and why there's a drawback to this kind of strategy. He's also got an A half-track, which he's not using, and that's a bit of a problem. Right now the Germans should really be prioritizing in getting this VP as soon as possible, because of course you don't want to be triple capped. Losing 1 VP per second to the enemy is a very bad thing. Because if this keeps up, in about 7 minutes, you will have lost the game. And especially with elite troops, you'd want your game to go as long as possible, so you'd get into a position where the Tiger Ace can be a much more powerful presence on the field and have a much more bigger impact. So we have a captain coming on the field, and he's got enough fuel for a Stuart, but I'm thinking he's making a mistake here, modeled by building a 50 cal. In my opinion, a Stuart would be a way better decision at this point, because the 222, I'm just gonna call it the 444. The 444 would have a bit of problems dealing with the Stuart and the A half track, and would thus secure the American map control a lot more. So we have some S minefields going down in a very curious location. I wouldn't go for an S minefield over here. I would go for an S minefield over here at the cutoff, but that's just me. The captain with bazookas will be easily able to defeat one of the scout cars, because it was diving in to attempt to gain the flank, and rather the front of the A half track. Very peculiar unit where the flank is actually the front. And the bazookas will be able to finish off the 2 scout cars. So right now Angry German is in a very precarious location. Very rip scout car. Really don't see why the Americans wouldn't just push for these last remaining resource points just to deny them to the Germans. So we have some Panzer Grenadiers being built. Panzer Grenadiers can be a good idea, but I don't really like Panzer Grenadiers on Langreskaya. I much prefer upgraded Grenadiers, which are cheaper. But right now he's got a bit of munitions problems. Well, he doesn't really have that many munitions problems, because he's got that cash that I don't really agree with. But, you know, nice rifle grenade will be inflicting some major losses on that lieutenant. And along with the Panzer Grenadiers pushing up, this might be a pretty decent engagement for the Germans. There are also a bundle grenade being thrown in at the second rifleman spot. Actually, no, this wasn't a bundle grenade. That was a stun grenade. Stun grenade is going to stun, of course, the rifleman, but they will probably be able to retreat. Yep. They luckily... Oh no, actually a snipe from the Panzer Grenadiers at longer range. So this is a really nice pickup for the Germans. As you can see, if you can get the Americans into engagements that they really are just have no business participating in, you can definitely inflict major losses on them. And if you had more infantry units and you had played more conservatively earlier in the game and not sustained as many losses, you'd be in a much better position right now. Angry German is managing to rebuild his army a little bit with tier 1 units, and it's partially because right now the Americans are playing way too defensively. The Americans should be pushing up right up to the cutoff, right up to the base, taking all of the points, using their numerical superiority and also their unit superiority, because they have way better units right now. I'm pretty sure that he's building the Major. No? Then why does he have such little fuel? Oh no, he already built the Major. Okay, excellent. That shows my excellent map awareness and also general awareness. So we have bazookas being upgraded on the Major. One of them. You can see the Major being a badass holding the bazooka. And a second, oh, he went for a light machine gun. So it looks like he's upgrading his squads with both light machine guns, BARs, and bazookas. So this guy's making the triple threat of the weapons. Don't really agree with that. I would really suggest either upgrading bazookas and LMGs on every squad, one of each, or just upgrading all the riflemen with LMGs, and then the rear echelons with the bazookas and the Major with the bazookas, which would be enough as a defense against any kind of German vehicle that comes up. So right now, Angry German is managing to regain some map control, but he's still got a long way to go until he's in a equal footing with the Americans. we'll see if he can do this, because right now the Americans are definitely not playing as well as they should. So it looks like he's got one rifleman squad with full bazookas and one rifleman squad with full LMGs, whereas the Major has one LMG and one bazooka. So this is a very weird setup for the Americans, and some rifle grenades excellently placed are going to wreck the American infantry that was approaching. The Panzer Grenadiers are being used too defensively. They should be right up there in the fight, and the Grenadiers should be sniping from the rear. So the LMG squad is the only one that's alive, and it's really the only one that matters because it's the most dangerous one. The A half-track is approaching, and it's gonna eat a Panzerfaust, actually 2 Panzerfausts from the German vehicles. This was the German infantry. This was a mistake because it doesn't really have anything to follow up. 1 Panzerfaust would have been enough to conserve the munitions. So on the left side, we have a pretty big problem for the Americans, is that while they have the pretty much they have cleared of German units, they aren't sending anything to recapture the points that they lost to the harassment of the pioneers earlier. And this is a very big mistake for the Americans, because it is just allowing the Germans lots of resources that they shouldn't be gaining right now, especially if some units were to be sent to this cutoff and this cutoff. It would be fairly easy to then regain all of these left side resources. And if just one of the bazooka squads was sent in against this munitions cache, it would be an easy pickings for them. So the S-mine field will actually be able to pick up a rifleman squad on retreat, which is excellent news for the Germans. They're starting to regain a bit of their pop cap disadvantage. They're almost even, and this is partially because of the inertia of the Germans, actually. So one good thing going, or rather the inertia of the Allies. What right now should be happening is after this player gets enough resources, he should get for a Sherman. This definitely really needs a Sherman to push up against this resurgent German infantry force. So the Sherman will definitely be really good at wiping out a few of these squads that are starting to get fed up. And he should pop out the vehicle crew of the A half-track and put it in the Sherman for some extra veterancy on the Sherman as it comes off the field. So the pack gun is on the field, and now the American player sees it and retreats his A half-track to a bit of a safe distance. Now he's going to send in his infantry horde. And interestingly enough, the Angry German didn't go for another MG, which will definitely help him out against this huge force. Stun grenade gonna go down on the lieutenant, probably saving the Grenadier squad from being wiped out on retreat, because the lieutenant is very, very dangerous at that kind of close range. More grenades gonna go down. This was an American one? Yeah, this was an American one. So it looks like grenades were upgraded for the Americans, and the Sherman is indeed on the production queue, rather. Now, again, this Sherman is a bit late, but it's still early enough to deal a lot of damage to the German units, because Angry German also has been neglecting upgrading his base at all. He's only gone for the tier 2, and what right now he should be focusing on is getting up to tier 4 and getting out of Panther, because right now he knows that it is infantry company that he is facing. And the reason he knows this is because of the LMGs that some of the American infantry are using, and also because of the fact that he knows that the enemy doesn't have the Tactical Support Regiment, which is the other doctrine that can allow him access to these LMG M1919s. Another thing that right now the Americans could do is set up their Major with the ambulance retreat point up to about here. Looks like he will build it over here. Use the retreat point over here with the where the fighting position is. And considering most of the fighting is on the right side, this is understandable. But what right now really the Americans need to do is capture these points on the left. They're just allowing the Germans not only more time with the VPs, because if there was a triple cap going with the left side VP being in American hands, these Germans would have a lot less time to get out that Tiger Ace or that tier 4 units. But not only that, also just denying this fuel point to the Germans and the strategic points to the Germans would really improve the American situation. Especially these strategic points would improve the American situation, because it would give him more, just more munitions to upgrade his infantry with. which is definitely key for the Americans, and then more munitions later on to use the time-on-target artillery barrage, which, while against Wehrmacht isn't too useful, it can still be a decent area of denial of area tool. So the American infantry is going to push up way too far. They should be using their long-range superiority against the Panzer Grenadiers to their advantage. Against the Panzer Grenadiers, the American strategy is reversed than against the Grenadiers. You want to get as far away as possible from them, whereas against the Grenadiers you want to be as close as possible to them. So the Pack Gun is attempting to push up against this A half-track. The Sherman was panzerfausted earlier and is now repairing. Soon enough, he will have enough resources for a Priest, which is, in my opinion, the best decision he can make right now. Because right now the Germans, while they do have the resources for a late-game tank, it shouldn't be the main focus of the Americans, because if the Germans go for a Panzer IV, then the bazookas, existing bazookas on the American infantry units, would be way more than enough to deal with the Panzer IV. And if it was a Panther, then it would only be able to deal with the anti-vehicle side of things, so the Sherman would be its main target, and the Sherman really isn't key to the American army, so a Jackson really isn't needed to counter German tanks right now for the kind of strategy that the Americans are going for. Whereas if a Priest was on the field, it would be very useful to counter these support weapons, the mortar and the Pack Gun, and the infantry of the Germans from a safe distance. Especially also, now that most of his infantry is upgraded, Komodo could really use his rifleman squads to place down mines using the rifleman field defenses ability from the infantry company. And this would be really useful, as the Germans really would have a lot of trouble pushing up against the Priest with mines protecting it. This is of course talking about if the Germans do go for some kind of camper or something. So the Lieutenant is going to go down. Pretty poor unit preservation from both players at this point, but that is just something that comes with experience, so you cannot really blame a player for that. Again, really, this machine gun on the left side, it's really not doing anything because it's not protecting anything. You can capture with machine guns. So we have the Priest on the field. We'll see if this can definitely break the deadlock that right now is this game. And it would be really welcome relief for the Americans to have this Pack Gun being put out of action, because right now it's really starting to counter the Sherman very heavily. And again, really not sure why the Germans are floating this much resources. Yeah, it's not like he's been using his Pioneers in combat or as a capping unit on the left side. Another good thing that the Germans could do is just send some unit like this, especially this Pioneer, to capture the middle VP. Just as an attempt. You don't know if it's going to succeed or not, but just if there's enemy units there, you can just retreat. And if there's nothing there, then you get the VP, and you get more time off to build whatever late game unit you desire. So the Priest is firing on the mortar, which is probably a good idea. The mortar has up 10 kills and vet free, and now it doesn't anymore. So that is the reason why it was a good idea to attack that mortar with the Priest. And right now the riflemen are pushing up on the Pack Gun. Some Panzer Grenadiers are moving into respawn, but they will not be able to completely push back the American infantry unless they just charge into them, and they might have a chance then. Some bazooka snipes actually going down, which is bad for the Americans, rather than the Germans, of course, and they will be forced to retreat, along with actually just getting wiped by the LMGs at long range. Wow, excellent maneuver. So, 2 Panzer Grenadier squads being upgraded and a time-on-target artillery barrage being called down. I'm not sure if you can call down time-on-target on the base, but I'm pretty sure you cannot. In that case, if that was possible, then I would have called down time-on-target on the base. Another option of calling down the time-on-target would have actually been on the mortar. As much as that sounds very weird, if the smoke had been called a little bit closer to the mortar, then the artillery would have destroyed the mortar, and which could be just a useful denial of a weapon to the enemy. So the bars, the rear echelons actually have 2 bars, and they're up to vet free with 8 kills. So that actually makes them a very dangerous squad. And the Sherman is actually going to wipe out a Grenadier squad. Wow. So as you can see, the Sherman is just a very useful unit for the Americans against an infantry-based force for the enemy, and the Panzer Grenadiers aren't really able to do anything. So the Tiger Ace is available, and again, really, if there had been tier 4 built, by now he would have the resources for a Panther, and possibly 2 Panthers, possibly a Panther and a Broom Bear. And then, after getting the Panther and the Broom Bear, and having a superior force to the Americans, then you can also add the add salt to the injury, or add fuel to the fire, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to say, and then get the Tiger Ace as well. Where instead he decided to go for a lot of Panzer Grenadiers, which, yes, it will help him out against the American infantry units. By the way, the A half-track pushing up way too far, and the Grenadier's not going for a Panzerfaust on it. Really is going to allow it to escape with its vet 2, which is bad. But the Sherman is also going in a very precarious spot. Again, not really sure why you aren't trying to Panzerfaust. Okay, now the Panzerfaust goes off a little bit late, possibly an animation bug. And the Sherman is in very big jeopardy. It should be using its smoke screen ability to screen itself against the Panzer Grenadiers. Oh, that's very unlucky. The Panzer Grenadiers hit a hill, and that will allow the Sherman to escape to the range of the fighting position, allowing the Panzer Grenadiers to retreat with just 1 man and dropping 1 Panzerschreck to the enemy. Actually, right now the vehicle crew of the flak after perhaps by mistake is actually charging the enemy along with the American infantry, and a nice flank from these Panzer Grenadiers will allow them to deal some heavy damage to the American infantry units before they turn on them after the pack gun retreats. Also, another mistake for the Germans is not using their Pioneers to man this mortar, and not really sure why he built the support armor corps. Again, this is just 80 fuel, I believe. Maybe 75, maybe 80 fuel, don't really remember exactly the cost, and pretty sure 240 manpower. That's wasted. It's just wasted. You're not going to be getting any unit out of this, because you could have gone for a tier 4 and just gone for better versions of the units that you get here anyway. So the tier 4 earlier would have definitely been an important part of your strategy. And now he's going for an Ostwind. Now the Ostwind is an interesting and good unit against the infantry, but just think of what you could have done right now had you gone for a Broom Bear out of the tier 4. You have the fuel for it, and you would have had the manpower had you not gone for this many Panzer Grenadiers, and had you not lost your Panzer Grenadiers earlier in reckless engagements. We also have a bar over here, which should be picked up by someone, and also the Panzerschreck over here is not being picked up by anyone, which is a very big mistake, honestly. It would be worth to just build that rear echelon squad just to capture it. Looks like he will go for it with a vehicle crew, which is very interesting. Looks like it's the vehicle crew of the flak half-track. So that's definitely very interesting to use the vehicle crew to capture the Panzerschreck. Maybe use it as a bait. It would be useful. You know what? It would be really cool if you had captured it with the... if Himmodel had captured it with the vehicle crew of the Priest, because that would definitely allow it to do some interesting baiting if any kind of enemy unit comes in after it. So finally, someone decides to switch the fight to the left side after the Meat Grinder World War I on the right side. Because again, if you're just fighting over one area and it doesn't work, just go to the other area. And now he will discover that, unfortunately, this MG has been there the whole time, and it will finally be useful. So we have a second Sherman for the Americans on the field, and that's definitely a good idea. Now, another problem for the Americans is that they're not really using their Priest barrages on cooldown. And what do I mean by this? Well, he used 1 Priest barrage on the mortar, and then he just kind of forgot about it. What you should be doing with your artillery units is having them on a hotkey. I prefer just to have the 1 hotkey for my first artillery piece, and then 2 for the second, because they're just so important units. They're just units that need micromanagement to be used effectively, because they won't fire automatically on the enemy, of course. So you need to just keep an eye out on them and use their abilities to barrage the enemy as soon as possible, just to get extra value out of them, because they are expensive units. The Priest is 480 manpower and 115 fuel. That is a lot. So you'd want to be getting that fuel worth, getting worth out of that fuel as much as possible. So the Ostwind is on the field and looks like it will spot the MG and easily take it out. The MG will see the enemy attack coming and will be able to suppress these enemy units, but it will not be enough. So the Austin, already proving its worth of anti-infantry, have an artillery being called on. That's definitely a big mistake. Oh, excellent shot from the captain, gonna wipe out the mine and the pioneer squad sitting on it. So we have a second Austin coming on the field. Now I definitely disagree with the second Austin. Really see no reason to not go for a tier 4 right now. There's really no reason for you not to go tier 4 Angry German. Because the Brumbear would be just as able to deal with the American infantry and would be also a much more survivable unit, especially against these Shermans and this AT gun. On the other hand, on the same hand, actually, the tier 4 would also allow you to build Panthers, which would be really useful against these Shermans, and to hunt down the Priest. Of course, the Priest isn't being used, which is a very big mistake for the Americans. So the Austins are dealing heavy damage to the American infantry force, but that is just mostly because of the negligence of the Americans to just not push with the Sherman against the Austins, because if the true Shermans were to just push against the Austins, they would be able to easily take them out, especially after the Panzer Grenadiers equipped with Panzer Shreks were forced to retreat off the field. One Panzer Grenadier squad also going down in that engagement is just not very good. He's going to rebuild a Panzer Grenadier squad and really disagree. Now he's going to fire the Priest at the minefield. Actually, very interesting use of the Priest. Also, I believe he's attempting to destroy the base bunkers and perhaps the infantry company, which is very interesting. I would have targeted the retreat point, but hey, that's also acceptable. Now, one reason why you may have not been using the Priest modal is because you do not know where the enemy is. Well, instead of wasting your munitions on artillery barrages into areas that the enemy can just simply dodge out of, I would have used the munitions on the recon run of the Major and mines. That's just would have been my decision, and I'm really not sure why these Panzer Grenadiers aren't picking up this bar. The bar really wouldn't detract out of their close range usefulness. Excellent shot from the Sherman with AP rounds wiping out the Panzer Grenadiers when one hit because they were very clumped up. So again, the Sherman's proving their usefulness as a frontline tank. So we have the Jackson coming on the field finally. Now, the Jackson will definitely be able to easily counter these Austrians from a range where even the Pack and the Panzer Grenadiers will have trouble reaching them. So right now the Germans have somehow, with use of some kind of witchcraft, managed to get a triple cap going on the Americans, and that is just because the Americans really aren't doing any kind of harassment of the left side. It's been left for the Germans this entire time. Honestly, I'm really not sure what the Americans are thinking, because they really need to send something to the left side to capture these points, and then to the middle to recapture this middle point. The lack of harassment is definitely a mistake that a lot of new players make, and it's just one of those things that really would help you win so many more games if you just, every time you send out your units after repairing them at base, if you just thought out, okay, what is the unit of my army that I need the least in a possible engagement? And then you send that unit to cap somewhere. You just send it to cap, and you will win many more games if you make that kind of reasoning in your head every time you finish replenishing your infantry. So right now the Americans have a full army, 100 pop cap. And the Germans, again, right now what I would be doing if I was Angry German is stop building Panzer Grenadiers and just go for a Tiger Ace. Right now the Tiger Ace would be my best bet to win, because that unit is just bullshit. Just straight up bullshit, because it will allow you to have a heavy tank without having any fuel. Of course, you do have fuel, and this is one of the reasons why the Americans playing terribly defensively and not pushing up against these capture points is actually not really being punished for them, because right now Angry German is not using his fuel superiority, which, as strange as it sounds, despite the fact that pretty much for most of the game, Angry German didn't really have any units to contest the Americans. Also, the flak after going down will free up some space for the Americans, for the American pop cap, so this is actually probably good for the Americans. Of course, what I would have done is stepped out the crew of the flak half-track and plopped it down on some new Sherman, just to give it a more veteran crew, but that would just been me doing that. Again, paradoxically, right now the Germans have fuel superiority, and also paradoxically, they're not using it at all, because they've gone for, oh look, 2 Ostlands. Right now, if those Ostlands and this Tier 3 hadn't been built, there would have definitely been enough fuel for a Panther and a Brumbear on the field. And if they had been a little bit more defensive with their infantry, instead of going for all these Panther Grenadiers, going for Grenadiers and upgrading them, and just playing a lot more defensively with them and not losing them. Also, the artillery looks like it is able to be called down on the base, so I'm really not sure why he doesn't just push a Sherman into the base and call down an artillery over here to destroy the medical bunker. So right now the German base is almost open to assault actually. Only 1 MG bunker remains, and after that it's only this MG bunker, and pretty much all of the base will be open to the American infantry swarm. Of course, right now the strength of the American army is these Shermans, so we will see how that works out. Again, my point that I was making is too many Panzer Grenadiers and playing too recklessly with them has drained the German manpower pool so much, and has not allowed them to call off the Tiger Ace, which would be very critical to make the final push if indeed the Germans had a balanced army on the field. Excellent grenade from the rifleman will almost wipe the pack gun. The Shermans should actually be really focusing on taking out this veteran 2 pack crew, as well as the infantry should be focusing on it, but nicely using the bazookas and the Jackson and the AT gun to destroy the Austin before it can do any shenanigans against the American infantry. Any pack gun is decrewed. But right now, the Americans should really be doing is focus firing with attack move on the pack and destroying it with their bazookas. Another option is to use the rear echelons to recapture it. Again, a Panzer IV. Really, no. You can go at this point for a Tiger Ace. Just save up your resources and go for a Tiger Ace. That would be my my advice to you. And if you had gone for this Tiger Ace, oh look, what kind of counters are there? There's a Jackson and an AT gun and a few bazookas. Okay, so the bazookas, the Tiger Ace can easily deal with those, as it is an insanely powerful anti-infantry tank. And then with the Jackson using the flanking ability that comes with the extra speed of the Tiger Ace, you can definitely flank the anti-tank gun and the Jackson, along with your pack support and your Panzer Grenadiers, which you lost again, and that's a bit of a problem again. You could have definitely pushed up against the Jackson and destroyed it, and then after that the Shermans are basically meat to the Tiger Ace because it is just that powerful of a vehicle. And now, right now, getting this Panzer IV really doesn't serve any kind of purpose. Think about what unit you're buying before you actually spend the resources for it and you actually go through with its construction. Think about what that unit can do to the game and what kind of forces the enemy has that unit will be good against. What right now this Panzer IV will be good against? The rear echelons, and possibly this squad which only has 2 LMGs and no bazookas, and then all of the other German, rather American units can actually deal in some capacity with the Panzer IV. And now you're going to be sending in your tanks. Since you lost all of your infantry, you're going to be sending them in alone, with no infantry support against, well, the unknown, really. Another thing that is important is you don't send your tanks into the blank spaces of the fog of war. You conduct some kind of recon first. So the Austin will attempt to destroy the priest and will actually succeed thanks to also some help earlier from the dead Panzer IV. But again, this is, while this is a more favorable trade than an Austin and a Panzer IV for nothing, it's still a, well, very unfavorable trade at all. The Americans don't really have the pop cap to regain the priest, but again, they don't really need it, as now the Germans really have nothing to protect against the way superior American army, and if they just right now moved into the base, they'd win. literally, if the Americans A-moved their vehicles into the base, just selected them all and pressed A-move into the base, they would just easily be able to destroy everything. Because there's nothing right now in terms of German anti-tank. There's nothing. And as you can see, the captain bearing the brunt of the German assault, but there's really nothing that right now they can do. And all of the German units will go down. Again, this was just a game that was painful to watch. I hope that you're gonna take these tips to heart, because really, you could have easily won this game had you gone for a few units differently. This is mostly just a mistake of not knowing when to build and why, really. Because yes, the micro mistakes and the losing squads can happen to anyone, but that will just come with experience, and you will learn to just avoid that. But then, the mistakes in what units to build and when, those are mistakes that can be corrected by, well, learning more about the game. And that is very important if you want to succeed in 1v1 especially. Another thing that I could advise to you is to play some 2v2s, perhaps with a friend. Because in a 2v2 you need to focus a bit less on micro and a bit more on macro strategy play. Because of course it's very important to just have a lot of team coordination, because if you have two players that are well coordinated, it doesn't matter how much more skilled in micro you two enemy players are. If they're playing 1v1s, they're gonna lose. So you can use that as a bit of a stopgap measure to avoid having to think about micro so much, and just start learning to think about the game in a strategic sort of way, and learn to build what when, and pit what units against what, and just learn to recognize what the enemy is doing. Because right now, throughout this entire game, this American player hasn't been playing optimally at all, but you have basically allowed them to play suboptimally and ignore a good 60% of the map, because he has ignored pretty much all of the map in the entirety of the game. If you would have sent a few units around to capture, you would have seen the MG earlier, you would have sent something against it, perhaps a Panzergrenadier squad over here, throw a grenade, destroy the MG, go, and then the left side is completely open. Oh look. And then the Americans have nothing on the left side, and you can just send your pioneers to capture everything. And then you have such a crushing resource superiority, and especially if you just build, a bit better units with it, then you can definitely really push back against whatever disadvantage you had, if that makes any sense. So I hope you enjoyed this cast. I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you soon.